Good afternoon. It is my privilege to stand here today, not as a mayor, but as a volunteer firefighter with almost 16 years of service with the Lancaster Fire Department. During that time, I have learned what the words commitment, service, and sacrifice truly mean. The volunteer fire service is comprised of some of the most inspiring, hardworking, dedicated individuals that you'll ever meet. They answer the call no matter the time or the day. And when everyone else is running out, we are running in. When there's an emergency, we'll be there. I am so pleased to be able to be here today. Though, unfortunately, we are having issues within our volunteer fire service, recruiting and retaining our members. And this is an issue across New York State. And it's a conversation that we're having amongst government and fire departments alike. I'm pleased to stand here today alongside my brother and sister firefighters to announce that the Erie County Legislature and Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars recognize the importance of the work that we do as volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. And they are showing their commitment and support through enacting legislation that allows for a 10% property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers in Erie County. Thank you to County Executive Mark Polenkars and to our Erie County legislators for showing their commitment and taking this step to show that they value the life-saving work that we do every day. We look forward to continued conversations regarding recruitment and retention in the volunteer fire service. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars forward to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I think the Mayor said it all. This is exactly why we're here. There are, unfortunately, across not just New York State, the entire United States, recruitment and retention issues with regards to volunteer fire departments. It is something my administration has been working on for quite a number of years, various programs to try to ensure that we could get more individuals into the fire service. It is a very important role that we know in all of our communities, and something that unfortunately continues to see declines in some districts, to the point where there are some fire districts in Erie County where they really cannot respond on their own, and they immediately need to go to mutual aid calls because of the lack of firefighters in their departments. The Fire Association of the State of New York, FASNY, has made it a strong call to ensure that there are incentives in place to provide for those who volunteer in our fire departments, as well as our ambulance corps that are volunteer. And that's why New York State passed a law that gives local governments an opportunity to provide a 10% exemption on their property taxes if you are a volunteer firefighter who serves in the district that you live in. And this was a unanimous support. We have a Democratic member of our legislature and we have a Republican member of our legislature here, because when this was brought forth at the legislature, all legislators agreed that we need to continue to ensure that our firefighting force is as strong as possible. And that is why I am very proud to sign into law this law to make it effective as of the next round of property taxes, so to speak. So it would go into effect as of the next year. But it gives every person who's considering to be a volunteer firefighter an extra incentive, so that they understand that we care about you, we appreciate your dedication of time, your dedication of having to go away from your family, often to put yourself in harm's way on behalf of the greater community. So very soon I'll be signing the certificate, which effectuates everything. But I want to thank my members of the legislature for unanimously supporting this law, two of them who are here today. I also want to thank the advocates from the volunteer fire force who strongly advocated for this policy, many of them who are kind of aging out, understanding that they will not really see the true benefit of this, but they want to see a strong volunteer firefighter force and ambulance corps force. So they supported this law so that new people could be brought in to the force and ensure that the long, strong tradition of volunteer firefighting in our community continues. With that, I'd like to provide an opportunity for Legislator Barnesi or Malshevsky to address, but I do appreciate our legislators for often when we have discussions of local laws, they take time, there's a lot of discussion, sometimes it comes down to party politics, not in this situation here. This was passed very rapidly and with the full support of all the legislators. So Legislator Barnese, and then Malchevsky will go in alphabetical order.
I just want to reiterate everything the county executive said. This was a no-brainer. Once this came to the county ledge, we were all on board. Once the state passed it, to give support to our volunteers, our first responders. It's a small incentive. It helps. Every little bit helps. But like the county executive said, hopefully it will help in recruitment and to bring in future generation of firefighters, first responders throughout the county. So I'm very proud to be part of this, and thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I assumed this seat in January, and I stand here before you very honored to have this the first law that's brought forth under my term. Prior to being a legislator, I was a councilman in Elma. I know the struggles of the fire companies in my district. It's a very rural district, and these issues just compound the further you go south. Working with bipartisan support on this, I'm very happy that we were able to bring this forward as a tool, and it was mentioned, you know, recruitment and retention. That's the key over here. Is this the answer? Absolutely not. It's a great starting point, though. It's a tool to be able to give the fire companies a way to, you know, bring in a new person, a way to keep a person that's there for another couple years. As a business owner, I see the issues with trying to bring in employees. I couldn't imagine trying to bring volunteers into something in this day and age. Volunteer firefighters are very special people. These are people that are willing to get up from dinner with their family. These are people that are willing to skip vacations. These are people that are willing to risk their lives to go answer a call, most of the time for somebody that they don't know. I'm very happy to be a representative from a county that's willing to put this forth as a tool to help everybody, and I look forward to expanding on this down the road. Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move this out of the way and get the certificate signed so that we can ensure that this law takes effect, and then we'll answer any questions from the media afterwards. Okay?
Push it over this way. It's okay. We're good. We're good. Keep going. Keep going. We're good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. good.
Any on-topic questions from members of the media?
County executive, is there a certain amount of time people have to serve until they get this county has to prevent someone from maybe volunteering their own taxes?
I am not aware of the state law requiring a certain amount of time of service, that just that they be presently enrolled as a volunteer firefighter and have met the standards to qualify as a volunteer firefighter.
Any idea why they need to roll this out? Why aren't people in fire service?
Well, it's like all kinds of areas where you see volunteers. You see people are very busy, and they're with all the everything and activities that go on in people's lives, it makes it very difficult to get volunteers, not just for the volunteer firefighter corps, but in all types of activities. It has been discussed for quite some time. We also, in many of our communities, have an aging population. The town of Lancaster is growing. That's a good thing. However, not every town in Erie County is growing. There are some that are losing population, and with that, it's also primarily because of aging of the population, that those, if you're seeing less people in a town, it means there's less people that live in a volunteer fire district. There's weird stories that have occurred in the last few years, including that some volunteer firefighters districts just have so few volunteers they can't even respond to a call because they don't have people that are qualified to drive a pumper truck or operate it. They don't have enough volunteers to actively fight in an actual fire. So what we hope is that this will be an additional incentive for those who want to serve, and then maybe gives them that little extra kick to do it, but also as a thank you. Thank you for serving, because when the big word is volunteer. And I know, considering the county provides the training programs for the firefighters, they are not just volunteering their time for a fire, but all the work that goes in to be qualified to train to actively fight fires is a lot. And any other type of incentive we can offer to ensure that they feel like they're being treated appropriately for their volunteer service certainly helps.
Talking about a 10% property tax exemption here, do you think that's enough to make a difference in recruitment numbers?
I don't know if it'll make up hundreds of new volunteers, but I think it will certainly be offered as an extra incentive so that an individual who's thinking about it might say, oh, maybe I won't, maybe I will, and then they hear this. It's like, well, 10% can be a decent amount depending on what your tax bill is. So I look at it this way, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to turn people away. It's going to make them, if they weren't thinking about it beforehand, maybe think about it now. And if they were thinking about it and just kind of hemming and hawing, then they're going to, and then this may be the extra kick they need. And for those that are presently serving, it's a big thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, and we appreciate your service to the community, and here's a benefit as a result of it.
Are there any other future plans to try to address recruitment numbers?
We've been trying to address recruitment for quite some time. I will note that we've done pretty good as a county. The problem is where. There are certain parts of the county that are seeing declining enrollment. Others are doing okay. And what you have to remember is we're seeing a graying of our population. Our population's getting older. So even though a volunteer fire department may not have lost the numbers of firefighters, they may have less firefighters now who will actively fight the fire because of age. They still may be a member of the fire force, but because of their age, they may no longer be able to actively fight. They could do something else that allows them to be part of the department, but they don't have as many younger people as they might have in the past. So we're constantly looking at ways to offer assistance recruitment. I also know, and this is something that not every volunteer fire department is thinking of, but there are others that are actually thinking that they may need to go to the Kenmore model, in which there's actively paid on-duty, on-call firefighters for certain times. So they have a volunteer force and they actually have a paid force. That's their job. Their job is to be paid firefighters. That would have been unheard of in many districts 10 years ago, nevertheless 20, 30 years ago, but there are some towns that are considering it now due to the declining workforce, or I should say declining volunteers, because when you have a call that goes out, and the vast majority of the calls that the volunteer fire departments receive now are not fighting fires, they're EMS calls, they're emergency medical service calls, somebody having a heart attack, car accident. You want to have response as quickly as possible. And if you have a declining enrollment of members of your department, that could only end up hurting the ability to respond in an emergency. So I know there are towns that are considering potentially going to a partially paid, partial volunteer force to ensure that they can get a quick response. And that would have been unheard of 10 years ago, nevertheless, 30, 40 years ago. But you want to ensure that you're able to respond as quickly as possible when there's an emergency. And if your community does not have the population to support it, then alternative views are going to have to be considered going forward. Anything else? Okay, thanks everyone. Thank you. Thanks for hosting us. Thank you. You're welcome.